Hello, welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle on Jump To It. We've a slightly different setup today. We've got AK Betts is back with us. He promised to come back last week, but he went away on holidays instead. So now we're going to hear all about his Galway shenanigans for 7 days down there and how he got on. We've also got Emma Nagle back on board after being away in the States for the last 3 weeks. Emma, welcome back too. And Johnny, as always, like myself, we're always here. All right, guys. First off, AK, tell us about Galway. How did it go?
It's going to be very hard to describe this without coming off as bragging a small bit there. The results were very good for us. We lost 29 quid on the first day, which was quite interesting, off quite high turnover. And then the rest of the week was very, very good. Culminating, the best day was Thursday for us, results-wise. Would have been our best ever day on track, basically, from a P&L point of view. So it was very, very good. Turnover wouldn't have been one of our bigger days, to be honest with you, but just the way we did things that particular day, that particular Thursday, just everything went right, and there was a big crowd there, and that's kind of the combination you need, really, a big crowd, and just getting lucky with weather and getting lucky with a few results as well. The way we tend to do things on the track would be, we don't massively chase favourites like like some of my colleagues would do. They'd bet the favourites extremely hard. We tend to find more value being a bit more competitive elsewhere on the price board in a race. And that went well for us. Like if you're looking at the Galway results, can't remember now off the top of my head, like saving away, but like the first couple of days was very heavy for favourites. And
first 4 favourites won on the Monday for starters.
Yeah, and I think there was a good few on the Tuesday as well. And then when you're talking favourites, I think there was a couple of favourites winning like in and around the price bracket of like 3-4 to 1 as well, which can be a lot more costly even than your 5 to 4 shots winning. But yeah, we ducked and dived pretty well for the week, and it's been a slow enough year, to be honest with you, but it's massively got us back on track anyway.
Well, looking at it, the last time you were on, you were telling us you were down in Killarney the previous week, where there'd been a 4-day festival down there. You had 2 pitches. On the Monday, you said you took, I think it was 80 odd bets and about $2,000 in turnover. You had 3 pitches in Galway. What are you talking about? Number of bets in a day? Overall turnover?
The only put, like, we've 3 pitches in the ring. So I'll give you an example of what we did last year. Last year was our first ever year standing at the track. We put 2 of our pitches last year on Monday through to Thursday into the Mayor's Garden down the other end of the track, which was a very bad decision on my part because it was poor. The ring would have been a lot busier. I was actually calling it the Mayor's Garden for about 18 months before somebody told me it was Mayor's. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. You're kind of quite dependent on like Galway's real solid. They always get a big crowd there. The weather makes a huge difference. So for example, the Tuesday wasn't a good day for us turnover wise. You're talking a Tuesday of Galway. We took 600 bets across 3 pitches, which is not great, but that would be in the minority, and that would be based on the weather essentially. I think Galway have been pretty unlucky. We've been anecdotally told that the Friday has been very, very good. This year it rained on the Friday evening, and last year was pretty bad weather on the Friday as well when they had the big crowds. I think the flexi tickets has been a good idea for Galway. If people see the bad weather, like on the Tuesday, the crowd looked like it was severely affected on the Tuesday, but then it was ramped up for the Wednesday and Thursday even further. To my eye, I've not seen any figures on that. So yeah, it's real weather dependent. We have a real good pitch it's on the stand line, and it's number 1 on the stand line, so it's right on the corner next to the stands as well. And I think that can mitigate some of the disaster from the weather, that people run out from the stand and they basically just bet with the first pitch they see because they don't want to get soaking wet essentially. So that's it kind of mitigates us a little bit when it's bad weather. This year we put all 4 pitches into the ring, like I said, Tuesday and Friday with the bad weather days. Every other day was like you did get a little bit of intermittent rain, but crowds were good, the bet was good, and yeah, real happy with it overall. It's a real strong festival. Like a lot of people, saw a few comments on Twitter, people detracting about the quality of the racing over the 7 days. It's not a Royal Ascot standard, like, you know, it's not top racing, but it's people's racing basically. It gets people out, and that's what kind of interests me more than 8 runner races with Willie Mullins having the front four in the betting. Galway's a lot better from that point of view.
And coming to that, just with it now down there, there's a lot of punters obviously go to Galway.
Yeah.
People save up to have a few bets at Galway as well. So what sort of bets are you striking there? Are you talking 3-figure bets with a lot of punters, or 4-figure bets with some, or where would you be?
Yeah, it's kind of like the biggest bet we probably laid on the whole week was probably £1,000 each way, say on a 12-1 shot or something like that, which might not sound amazing over the whole week, but like you do have customers that fit into that bracket for those meetings. The average bet is probably 25-30 quid. I could run the numbers on it. I don't have them to hand here. It's probably 25 to 30 quid, but you have to remember as well that a good proportion of those bets will be 250s each way and 5s each way and stuff. So once you're stripping those out, your 50, 100 quid punters, 100, 200 quid punters, there's quite a few of them knocking around for the festivals, and they tend to focus on the front end of the market. And if you can, as a bookmaker, if you can duck and weave correctly on those races, it can be good. Obviously, if you get it wrong, it can be fairly bad as well. But we were lucky enough this week, and it was a brilliant week results wise for us. I think some of my colleagues in the ring who play slightly different to us, and I'm not saying we do it right or they do it wrong or vice versa or whatever, but people that play slightly different to us, I think, had a tough enough Galway, to be honest with you. So if you got a bookmaker who did things a little bit differently onto this podcast, I think there would have been a couple of bookmakers that struggled to cover expenses last week, but like it was a really good week for us.
And what were your expenses for the week? You had 3 pitches. How many staff had you down there for the week?
Good question. I had 5, I think, on the Monday and Tuesday, of which it might have been 6, of which I was 1 on Monday. 5 I had to come back to Dublin on Tuesday, and then I was there for the rest of the week, when we would have had 7 essentially, of which I was 1. So you're talking 7 people to get into accommodation. You're feeding for the week, going on a few nights out and stuff like that. You're paying for the accommodation. Your pitch fees are obviously, like we mentioned previously, 3 times entry, and we have 3 pitches in the ring. So I think I roughly worked out our expenses about 14 or 15 grand on the week. It's probably not 100% factoring in food as well, probably slightly above that. So you're basically going into a week, say 15, 16 grand down for us. There's another bookmaker in the ring. I think he's 4 pitches. He might have 3 pitches. I won't name him, but he told me his expenses were 21, 22K for the week before you strike a bet. So
he was obviously feeding his staff better than yours.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll staying somewhere nicer anyway, but yeah, one or the other. Yeah.
All right, Johnny, you were down there, part of Galway, were you? What did you make of it?
Yeah, I was down on the Wednesday, Vinny. It was I enjoyed it. I have to say, like always, kind of as AK says there, it endures, and there was a nice kind of spread of winners as well across the week. I know that the big 2 jumps races were, I suppose, dominated by the big powers, but I enjoyed it. It's still, the problem for race tracks, I suppose, like the festivals are enduring quite well. Galway doesn't really seem to be slowing down in terms of popularity. Galway itself as a city is absolutely thriving. I guess the challenge for race courses is to get people going day to day, and I think we need to look harder at how to improve the race course experience for those. But Galway was still, it's still great crack. I suppose the one thing I could say maybe is that, like, I still felt that there wasn't the crowd sort of interaction with the race, and is something that's kind of gone from races. And I still kind of saw that in Galway, where I didn't think the crowd was particularly animated during the races like the old days. That's something I think that we could certainly do with getting back. But in general, AK paints a nice picture of the betting ring. It's great that that's the case, because a lot of the betting at tracks, they're struggling. But I think the betting ring in Galway is still a very vibrant part of it. And in fairness to Michael Maloney, I think he's been quite cognizant of that. He was keen that the betting ring would remain part of the Galway experience. And in many ways, it's an outlier, Galway. It hasn't changed that much over the years. And I enjoyed it massively, for all that I was probably glad to be going home as well on Thursday.
And one other thing there, AK, just back to Galway again, you were saying that about the race course, they weren't going to allow you bring in your cars beforehand to set up your pitches each day. How did that work out?
The first day was a bit of a mess, to be honest with you. It was an absolute... it was just a disaster. Essentially, it was a disaster. My guys can't think what time the first race started on the first day.
5 or something like
Yeah,
that.
something like that. My guys were there very early, so you talk. I think I have it on a WhatsApp, but I won't check it now. But I think they were there, say 12:30, and they were basically sat in a car park until about 2:00, waiting for their gear to be loaded onto a lorry, and they were allowing one lorry into the betting ring. It's just a weird one. They always cite health and safety tracks, and listen, health and safety, I know that everyone has to protect themselves from that point of view. There's plenty of vehicles driving around inside the track. Lads selling watches were driving their cars in to sell watches and things like that. Like it's not that hard to basically allow bookmakers to drive the car in and set the gear up. Like I said to you, the gear is very, very, very heavy. We've 3 pitches, like, so even when you're leaving, you tend to leave when you've got concurrent days, you tend to leave the actual steel in the ring, because that is especially heavy. But like, we're carrying screens like those. The screens that I have are $5,000 a pop, basically. So with 3 of those screens, and you're dragging them through car parks and like uneven surfaces, and they're heavy, like they're very, very heavy. Like a couple of my guys are not short on the brawn, shall we say? And it's a bit of a hassle dragging the gear out, because it's an arduous task, basically. So yeah, I think that was really, really poor from the track's point of view.
And is that the only track you have that issue with? It doesn't happen at other tracks, does it?
There's tracks that are a lot more accommodating. Like I'd always tend to just, in general, the further you go outside of the capital city, essentially, they tend to be a lot more accommodating. Probably tends to be a bit more stringent in and around the capital with what you can do. It's just about the times you can get in, and just basic things. Like, I know they don't affect everyone. Probably no one even cares me saying this, but it's just another unnecessary barrier that which with just a few simple steps could be solved and improve the morale of people. Bookmakers all love a moan at the best of times, but they have a genuine gripe there, I think.
Well, your association went and tried to get rid of the gripes last week. Free entry into the Cur on Saturday for a Group 1 race, which I think is one of the first times I've ever seen that. We also had free entry into Nice last Monday on the bank holiday as well, sponsored by one of the studs that was sponsoring the race there. First off, Emma, you're going to tell me you went to America you were in America for the last 3 weeks. You went to Del Mar Races one of the days. That was free entry. That seems to be a standard thing in the States, is it?
Yeah, I think Del Mar is free entry every Thursday, but you have to, I think you download an app and become a member. So it's kind of, I suppose, a way in kind of making sure people are staying connected with the racetrack while getting their free entry as well. But yeah, I think it's regular every Thursday, but they race Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But yeah, there was a massive crowd there. I was kind of surprised by it, to be honest. Wasn't expecting a big crowd. Obviously, it's probably the quietest day of their weekend racing, I suppose, a Thursday, but really young crowd, totally different atmosphere to an Irish racetrack. It's real kind of just different. I suppose it's just more American. The whole culture is different to ours, but a real spectacle, hearing the trumpets and everything before the racing. It's kind of, they really get into it, I suppose, even in the smaller days racing, as we saw. But yeah, I was there with my sister and one of her friends, and they were just shocked by the kind of whole wealth of the whole place, like the prize money offer, even for kind of the small race day like that. I think like the maidens were worth about 80k a go and stuff like that. So they were kind of shocked by that. But yeah, it's a lovely setup. Kind of bringing back to free entry, I suppose, like you mentioned. I think it was probably a good idea by the bookmakers to try and do that for the Curragh and for Nice, like you said. I suppose they have to kind of try and do something to get the crowds into the Curragh. Like, they struggle, and even on their biggest day, the Derby day, they struggle to get a crowd. So I'm not 100% sure what the figures were, but I'm sure they probably got more than what they would have without it. Whether now people will keep coming back when they have to pay to get back into the Curragh, I'm not 100% sure, but be interesting to see what AK thinks. Like, did it affect the betting turnover? I know that's been kind of a problem in the Curragh. Like, the betting figures have been very poor, but what did you think about that?
I'll try and eloquate my thoughts here. We pay, as bookmakers, we pay pitch fees. I'm going to try and stay none too critical of the organisation that I'm part of, because I think it's really important that we all stick together and we are all after the same common goal at the end of the day. I didn't see the point of it. It made very little difference to our turnover. You're talking like it's very, very small figures. Like we won 500 quid off 5.5 grand, basically at 10% after expenses, talking probably 100 quid, nothing really. I think they got a lot of, from what I hear, I wasn't actually at the track, from what I hear, they got a lot of families through the door, which from my point of view doesn't add anything to the betting ring at all. Like it's kind of, you can see how many people came back the next day. There's basically nobody there. I've asked our organisation a few questions, 6 or 7 pointy questions, and I did it on a WhatsApp group. I won't go into it in too much depth, but I didn't get any response essentially from the people who made the decisions to sponsor at the Curragh. I don't think it's also, I think to judge the feasibility of something and whether it's worth sponsoring from a bookmaker point of view, you kind of need to know the numbers. You kind of need to know what's been paid. There seems to be a rumor going around a few bookmakers that it's a significant enough 5-figure number that our organisation have put into the Curragh for that day. It's basically made no difference to the turnover. Not many people came back the next day. We pay pitch fees, just to hark back to that. I don't think it's racecourse bookmakers' responsibility to get people through the door. It's racecourse's responsibility to get people through the door. We've basically, from the way I see it, is we've just given a chunk of money away for very little return, essentially.
This is an interesting thing there, just with this, is that those 2 meetings that we had that were free last week, neither of them were instigated by the racecourse. You'd one by the Bookmakers Association on track, you'd the other one by a stud farm that was sponsoring a race, trying to drum up a crowd for their meeting at Nace. The racecourses don't seem to be in favour of this. Certainly, they'll do it okay if they've got a rescheduled meeting on a Monday or something when there's due to be nobody there. Yeah, they'll throw open the gates, but they don't seem to be in favour of this. I presume they're seeing it as being a case, look, any numbers that come in and pay the 10, 20, 30 quid, whatever it is at a particular meeting is money in their bank, isn't it? In their satchel, whatever way you want to look at it. Whereas, how much are they going to get out of it? They want someone to underwrite it, which is what the bookmakers did and what the stud farm did in Nace. What do you think, Johnny? Is there a future in free entry?
I'm not mad on the idea, because I think once you go down that route, you do start to value in the product. And I think, if you're involved in ownership, they've improved in terms of getting syndicates access, and generally, if you try hard enough, people will probably be able to sort out tickets for most race meetings. But I tend to agree with AK on this. The Curragh has a real problem, where we've had all this money spent on it, but people aren't going. And I really feel that it needs to get its train station back. It needs to become an excursion that you could do from Galway, from Cork, from Kerry, from Limerick, from Dublin, to go to the Curragh, go on the train, come back on the train, have a few drinks, don't worry about driving, and have a good day there. They got rid of the Curragh station about 20 years ago. That was a disaster. They need to get it back. Brian Kavanagh has spoken about potentially having a park and ride at the Curragh for people commuting day to day. I think they need to enhance the PA at the Curragh. I think they need to make it more of an experience to go racing, because we've this beautiful facility where the betting ring is moribund. People have gotten out of the habit of going. Maybe people are a little bit fed up of the flat, but at the same time, the flat's really competitive in Ireland. You go racing on Saturday, you've this beautiful Frankel horse making his debut for 2.5 million, and we need to sell that. We need to get people back to the Curragh, because it's a massive white elephant at the moment, the lack of interest in it. And I really do think that the railway station is really important to that, because to drive to the Curragh means obviously you can't have a drink, and people's attention spans are such now that racing without having a drink and basically following racing for 4 or 5 hours isn't that easy of as a sell anymore. And I do think we really do need to talk about the Curragh more and ask, where is this going? Because the guts of 100 million spent for no particular reason now, except for improvement for the jockeys in the weighing room. That who's it benefiting? Because people just aren't going. It's a real problem.
Just on that as well, if you don't mind me interjecting, I understand, and people will always come back. Racecourses will always come back about devaluing the product if you let people in free, and you can talk about, I don't know, whatever the elasticity of the demand of that, but I don't know, what am I trying to say here? Yeah, like I don't know. Like I think when people are turning up at the racetrack, say the people that do pay, say you put your entry fee at 10, 15 quid, 20 quid or whatever, and we see at various tracks, even the big racing tracks, Curragh, Leopardstown and stuff, they don't get much of a crowd, especially midweek. Like some of the music nights have been pretty quiet at Leopardstown this year, for example. I always worry about the people that do get through the door, because we see it just as bookmakers that say for whatever reason, a group of lads, 4 lads have decided, God, Leopardstown's on tonight, I'm going to go to Leopardstown and we'll all pay our 20 quid. When they get through the door, it can be not great when there's not many other people there. So you're kind of just in this big vast arena with not many other people there, and it's kind of like people, like the younger people especially, you're hearing about people not saving and they're spending the money on experiences and stuff. My worry is that even when they do get people through the door, those people aren't going to come back, because what they get when they get through the door isn't great. And I think like it's very important. Like I always think with the Curragh, they're always trying to portray the fact that it's improving, and it's like we've seen quotes in the last couple of weeks that it's a lot better this year compared to last year. For me, it's exactly the same. There's been absolutely no difference and I get the tweaking little things, but I think everybody is kind of whitewashing what it is and not saying what it is. And like, listen, if that makes me a black sheep for actually saying what I think on it, like I to be honest with you, I don't mind at all. But there needs to be significant improvement to what it is at the moment, because like I have a business there and I don't go. So, do you know?
We see, like I live locally here. I live on the Curragh. I'm only 5 minutes away, a little village on the edge of the Curragh. Huge racing population here. Every single person I know in our local pub has some connection with racing, and yet they will not go to the Curragh. They'll go anywhere else, but they won't go there. I don't know why. I know on Saturday with the free entry and everything, as far as I know, from a straw poll in the pub on Saturday night, one person went. He's a regular race goer at the Curragh. He'd go every day. He wouldn't, if it was on 7 days a week, he'd be there 7 days a week in the Curragh. It's the only race meeting he goes to, and he loves it. But outside of him, no one else went.
Yeah, just on that as well, I think just to further that point as well, like obviously because the bookmakers sponsored the meeting, there was a few free tickets going around, and like I sponsored a race series at the Curragh last year. We got plenty of free tickets with that. You pretty much can't give them away. Like you're talking about devaluing the product. When you're giving away the free tickets, people are just saying, nah, you're grand. I'll go to the park with the kids instead. Like it's like that is a real problem. Like it's a real problem.
So flipping that around then, Emma, you went to Delmar. There's a great crowd in it. What are they doing different? Why is it? I suppose, look, it's the other side of this as well. You look at Galway. They can charge them 30 quid in, and yet you get 25,000 odd there on the Thursday and big crowds all through the week. So the entry fee is not the issue, I don't think. I don't think that's the deterrent from people going. There's no one in my local pub saying to me, I wouldn't go to the Curragh because it's 10 or 15 or 20 quid in. It's not about that. They're going to see football matches. They're going to see concerts where they're paying hundreds. They're even, as I have a daughter flying to the UK to see Taylor Swift because it's paying for accommodation and everything over there, all just to see a concert. So you're talking, she's probably going to spend 500 or 600 quid on a single night out. So I don't think the 10, 20 quid is really the problem. What do you think, Emma? How do you get people going and make it a day that they remember, want to go back?
Yeah, like just taking Delmar, for example, like I think the kind of free entry is probably a bit of a gimmick, really, because once you get in the door, everything is probably double or triple the price of what you paid in Ireland in the first place. I think I paid about $15 for a can of Corona inside there. Like, so, I mean, that's probably my entry fee gone on one drink. So, like, that's kind of, I can probably a bit irrelevant to getting the crowds there in the first place. But it's like AK kind of touched on it earlier. It's kind of the experience you get once you get in the door. I know things were expensive, as I mentioned, on the American track, but just kind of the whole vibe at the race course. It's obviously playing to a different culture to what we have here. But, you know, they had, I don't know who they were, but they were some kind of celebrities walking around the racetrack, and they've loads of fan cameras everywhere. They're getting all the crowd involved. There's kind of young people waving, and they're all on the big screen. It's just kind of more a spectacle, I suppose. Look, whether that would translate to our kind of culture here, probably not so much. And probably we've got an older base of race goers with kind of different attitudes to things like that and stuff like that. But like I think Galway is probably just the best example of getting kind of people in, enjoying the racing. Like as we mentioned, it's not going to be Royal Ascot standard of racing or Cheltenham standard of racing, but people go there and they have a great time. Obviously, every race course can't replicate that, but just giving people value for money once they get in, like whether they're getting free entry or not, getting everything kind of like, food, drink at a reasonable price. I think Ireland do something very well. We don't split the enclosures. Everyone can go wherever they want to go on a racetrack, which is brilliant. I don't like that idea. They had that in America as well. You weren't allowed up in the stand unless you paid extra. At England, have that, you're kind of segregated depending on how much you pay to get into the track, which is a terrible idea, I think. So that's probably one thing that Ireland do well, but it's kind of hard for, like AK mentioned, the likes of Leopardstown there on a weekday. Like, how are they going to attract people? I don't think I've ever been weekday racing at a flat meeting in Leopardstown, but I've seen pictures and heard people talking about it, and like the atmosphere just looks absolutely dead. And like when you think of Leopardstown as kind of a location, like they're surrounded by offices, you'd think, a group of lads, group of girls there would go out after work, go racing in Leopardstown, but they just have no appeal to people who are like literally right outside the track, which is maybe a small bit worrying for kind of racing and drawing in a crowd. How they get them going is kind of it's a real good question. I think flat racing in Ireland in general just doesn't have that draw though. And what we're going to do to kind of get people to get going to the smaller and probably bigger flat meetings is kind of a bit of a head scratcher, unless it's a bit of a party like Galway. They really seem to struggle.
Well, there's the thing I was suggesting in the blog I wrote this morning. It's just, you take Galway. We had 25,000 people there on the Thursday, big crowds all through the week, whatever it was, 125,000 in total or something went over the 7 days. What about giving them a free entry to some other race meeting around the country for the next few weeks, that if you paid into Galway, it gets you a free go somewhere else? Get them to come back, go out for another day. They had great fun in Galway. Why wouldn't they go to wherever it may be? Those people are from all over the country for starters, not just from the Galway or the West area. What do you think, Johnny?
Well, I think the likes of Leopardstown, like we've spoken about this before as well. The timing of racing now, it's starting quite early, ending quite early. It doesn't suit people after work. I think the racetracks need to start targeting like businesses and try to get people from a business to organise like work nights out where say in the legal sector, like Leopardstown has a night where basically my girlfriend is a lawyer, and she was at the horse show last week, and she spoke like so favorably about it. But if her business, for example, were targeted in terms of Leopardstown, come up with them and said, "Would you like to come racing this particular day? We'll give you an incentive." They will have a good night. Like it's still a good evening out. But at the moment, it's not an easy sell. And I think what you alluded to there, Vinny, is what's really alarming is like the thing that's striking for me is that I know so many massive racing fans who watch racing every day. They just don't go racing.
Yeah.
What about that, AK? There's a lot of that, isn't there?
Yeah, no, there is. And like Leopardstown, in fairness to them, you can see there's a few little things they're doing recently that when I've seen them announced look really, really good. So for example, this Bowmers Festival, which when it kicked off originally, I think it was hopping enough. Last year was quiet on some of the nights. Some of the acts they've had this year, listen, I'm getting older and everything, but Jesus Christ, I have no idea who half of them are. Human League are coming up. I'll probably actually go to that one, and we'll do a little bit of a night out between everybody. But I thought one of the recent things Leopardstown have done very well is, again, not a sport I'm into, but American football. They've had the tie up with the American football, the game that's on in the Aviva, and they've got like an American football themed night out on that Thursday, I think. I think it's in 2 weeks or something like that. So that's a real clever idea of linking the two sports. Whether there'll be enough American people over on the Thursday, I don't know. I have a staff member over that I've been trying to book hotels for that weekend, and it's fairly impossible. Like one thing I always thought, like, everyone mentions like Microsoft and whoever all the offices are around there, but I always think with Leopardstown, they've a Westwood gym on the premises. They're fairly, whether they be considered high-end gyms, they're expensive enough to be a member. I was a member of that gym for about a year. I think I went 3 times, but again, neither here nor there. But like you've got like they've probably 8 or 9 gyms in Dublin, Westwood. They've plenty of probably good-looking people that like to keep in shape, that are taking pictures of themselves every 5 minutes. Like that, Westwood would be an ideal one to have a Westwood bloody gym night where you get those 9 gyms, bang out a lot of free tickets to people, like little things like that. I think the point you made around it's all about, like, I think Emma made the point as well. You have to sign up to get into Del Mar. You basically get the customer's data, as probably Galway should have, and then HRI or someone like that should be, as you said, pinging free tickets for the next meeting at Tramore this week or next week or whenever it is. Things like that, just to try and re-engage people. We just need to find a way to get as many people through the door, and as when they're through the door, I think it can be, outside of the festivals, the atmosphere can be quite sterile. It's quite a sterile atmosphere. There's not much reason to return, and I think we just need to. I think it's great having kids face painting and that kind of thing, but I think there needs to be a bit more to create atmosphere. It's atmosphere that we need to create, essentially.
Yeah, so Nace did an interesting thing with their free day. That when you went in, I don't know whether you paid for this or it was free as part of the free day, but you could get a ticket in a draw. They drew out 20, so they drew out for the big race. There were 20 runners, so 20 people had drawn a horse in the race. Whichever horse won the race, they got a trip to the Rugby World Cup. That's a nice one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's class.
And, yeah, isn't it? You could see how, like, I don't. You talk about maybe a 5-figure sum was spent by the bookmakers for Saturday's event in the Curragh, but if that had been a case that 5-figure sum, whatever it was 5 people's names got drawn out and they were handed $5,000 cash each, for argument's sake, in the middle of the parade ring after the third race. So you have 5 people standing there with $5,000 in cash. There's a chance they'll have a few bets. They might have a drink. They're hardly going to just go home. So, those sort of things, maybe that's a way of going about it, isn't it? Maybe you do 50 people getting 500 quid each.
Yeah, Nace seem to be really on top of things. I can't think of the gentleman's name who runs Nace, but they seem to be, of all the tracks, they seem to be really having a right go and doing things right from a marketing perspective as well. They're kind of the blueprint at the moment of what tracks should be doing, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, look, we've talked enough about it. We're not going to solve it here, I presume. But just one other thing we were going to talk about was the whip rules. The French are bringing in new rules from the 1st of September, which will affect the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe meeting, which we'll all be watching, no doubt, in the start of October. The basic rule is 9 strikes and you're out. So if a jockey, the current rule is 4 hits. You're only allowed to hit a horse since the start of May in France 4 times with the whip. And if you go 5 times over that, you will be disqualified on the day immediately. Johnny, is this a good idea?
Yeah, we just spoke about it. I'm not really sure where I am with the whip, Vinny, because what is the whole point of it for a start? I mean, the whip doesn't hurt the horse. This is clear as day. If you hit it off your hand, it doesn't hurt you. So it's more the crack of the noise of the whip, kind of. The horse could hear that, so he or she will respond. Jockeys use the whip mainly to win, but also as a sort of a safety measure at times. In fairness, as long as the rules are enforced, I don't have a major issue with it. And I think, in fairness, like, it's frustrating as a punter when you have a horse who's beating a short head, the other jockey did everything wrong, and you don't win, so you lose your bet. I think the fact that it'll be done on the day is not a bad thing. And in fairness, if the jockeys know exactly what to expect, I was struck by Jim Crowley, saying after the King George, like, I'm not sure, you're not counting your head in a. It's like a footballer dribbling through on goal isn't counting how many times he touches the ball. It's something that happens in sport. If you're in a top class race and you're trying to win in the heat of battle, this thing goes in a flash. Like, you're not really trying to, in your head, count how many times you're hitting the horse. So, to make a long story short, I don't know where I am on the whip. And the main thing for me is, who are we trying to satisfy with this? Because you're not affecting the horse by hitting him with this little cushioned pad that we have now.
Yeah, personally, I've no particular issue with that, because I don't know enough about it, ultimately, whether the horse is getting hurt or not, or whatever about it. But what I do see is there's a rule, and there's a rule saying you can only hit the horse a certain number of times. Same way in Gaelic, you're only allowed to bounce the ball so often. You have to take so many steps in the dribbling or whatever you're doing with solo on the ball. Every sport has rules, and they're stuck to, and that's why we enjoy sport, is because the rules keep it right. Whether it's golf and you have to abide by them on your own, even if your opponents don't know that you're doing that, or they expect you to do it. The same with snooker. We see it in every sport. So why horse racing? Is there rules to do with the whip that you can break the rules on a daily basis. What do you think, Emma?
Yeah, I think the French rule is a pretty good one, to be fair. I think their rule is four strikes, and like they're given fairly leniency there. Like it's over double the amount before you're disqualified, and it just, I suppose, it gives it a turn to jockeys. Is kind of in the back of their head, you know, if they're thinking of maybe not counting, that they'll be in fairly big trouble with the owners and trainers if they do go too overboard with the stick. Like I probably have sympathy to like the trainers and the owners of a horse if it was disqualified because the jockey going over the amount, but I think they're given fair enough leniency to it. And like you said, like all other sports have to kind of play within their rules, and yeah, I think something probably has to be done about it, because really, like, apart from maybe a short ban and a bit of a fine, especially in the big races, you know, a fine of a few grand to a jockey winning a Group 1 race is going to be mean very little to them with the prestige and the prize money that they'll get from winning it. So wouldn't be shocked to see something similar coming into Ireland and England in the future, and it's probably about time it might have, because there's kind of been a few instances in the last couple of years where it might stick out in your head that, you know, the jockey kind of maybe deliberately broke the rules in order to win the race. So it's probably something that's probably due to come in here as well.
There's one of the things with the UK have a rule where a jockey can be disqualified if he hits it more than 4 times over the limit and so on, but it doesn't happen on the day. It'll happen a week later. They do that AK, they say, for tote purposes, so people can get paid out and everything straight after the race. How do you find that at the races when there's a stewards' inquiry? Is that a bit of a mess for you?
Yeah, it's really bad. There was a particular one at Galway. I can't think of it again off the top of my head 2 weeks ago. But yeah, there was one at Galway where the stewards got called before the big race, I think on either the Wednesday or the Thursday, I can't remember. And it just curtails betting, essentially. I think it's really important to include the betting public and the people essentially that fund the sport, the betting public, and how dissatisfied they would be by some of these things. Like France, from a betting point of view, is a very, very, it's basically a monopoly, isn't it? In France, from a racing point of view, it's kind of an inferior product from a betting point of view. Anyway, I take the point you're making about rules are there and rules are in every sport, but this is just a perception thing. It's just nobody. If someone is beating the bejesus out of a horse, fair enough, like ban them and things like that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that Crowley ride.
Would he have won with 3 strikes less? If he'd hit the horse 3 times less with the whip, would he have won the race? That's my basic thing here, and I don't think he would have ultimately. I think the whip encourages the horse to go faster, so he hit it 3 times more than he was allowed. He wins whatever he wins, a short head or a head or something on the day. That surely is the making of the race for him, isn't it?
Yeah, and I just think as well, I know you're saying about the rules, I'd get rid of the people making the rules. Like this is just a ridiculous rule. Go back. Rules can be changed as well. Get rid of the people.
Yeah, as I say, I've no issue with the number of strikes. Like, as I say, it's 4 in France, it's 7 or 8 in the UK, it's 8 or 9 in Ireland. I've no issue with that. There's some countries where there's no limit, that a jockey can hit the horse as often as you like. Okay, take it out then. That doesn't count. Yeah. But it's when there's a rule, the rule should be enforced, in my opinion, anyway, in whatever sport it is.
Yeah, I just don't think there's a need for a number. I think that there's an account on Twitter, I think it's called Horse Racing Tech or something like that. And they were saying that there's the technology available that can actually, I don't know, somehow feed something through the palm or something of the jockey or something like that. They can actually say the amount of strikes a horse has had and can actually signal. And that was being trialed by the BHA at some point, and their response was, and I don't know where we got to with that. Yeah, I just don't have a problem with it. Like, I'm just thinking as well, all my friends that just aren't that into racing, that go racing occasionally, they don't not go racing because a jockey hit a horse 10 times and the horse is absolutely grand after it. Like they basically don't go racing because of what we discussed earlier, the sterile atmosphere and things like that. Like, the only people that care about horses and whips are the 300 animal rising nut jobs. Like, nobody else is that bothered about it. It's just not we talk about this topic all the time and nobody's interested in it. Like, it's not a factor at all from what I can see. So
it doesn't appear to be
mountain out of a molehill or racing and things.
I think the vast majority of people who follow racing don't seem to think Jim Crowley did anything wrong, as you alluded to there. And look, fair enough if that's what it is, but it's just I find it difficult because of the fact there's a rule and a rule is broken. And if I'm playing golf or something and I see some fella moved his ball 6 inches or something, you just feel aggrieved by the fact, Jesus, I could have beaten him only for he did that, or whatever the case would be. And the same when you back the horse, like the horse that finished second to Hookham in that race in Ascot, you just think, God, if my lad had have only hit his one 3 or 4 more times, he'd have got past Hookham. Where do you stop, I suppose, is the bottom line, isn't it? Anyway, another issue for future times. Listen, thanks for joining us, guys. One last thing, Johnny, have you a horse to follow from the week? Anything that caught your eye?
I will let Emma go first. Let me just get my Sligo up here.
All right, I'll give you one. Emma, you weren't around, so I won't put you on the spot.
I have one.
You have one. Go on, give me one if you have one.
I know. I watched the replays, so I caught up a bit right. I thought there was a maiden hurdle in Roscommon on Tuesday, and Charles Burns had a horse. I think first time out for him. He got him from the flat in England. Reverend Hubert, came from he was just eased into the race fairly slowly, and I thought he jumped very well for a horse first time off the flat, and I'd be surprised if he was probably beat next time out. He was quite my catching debut for the Charles Burns stable, so I'm looking out for him next time.
Good stuff. One I liked from the week was ran yesterday, a filly called Alanya, Tom Gibney's French import. This is the filly that won the Ladies' Derby. She won off 77, went up at 8. The problem is I don't know what he does with her now. She ran the Colum Quinn mile in Galway, the BMW mile, finished 9th there. That was over a mile too short. Back up to the 1.25 miles yesterday, finished 3rd in a good listed race in the Curragh. But I don't know what you do. The 2 horses behind were rated 99. The 2 horses in front are rated, I think the winner was rated 94, the second 101 or something. So this is only rated 85. So I presume it's going to get a big chunk up in the weights. But I see it's in on Friday there's a Group 3, the Give Tank Stakes in Cork. If it turns up there on Friday, it might possibly win, but it's up against the likes of Ross Carberry there. So I don't know what you do with Alanya, but certainly well ahead of the handicapper as of this moment in time, but may not be in another week. Johnny, have you got one?
Yeah, I like Uncle Albert, Vinny. He was running in a nursery in which there was a really, really strong favourite, Leah Fall, who'd been quite eye-catching 3rd in a 4-runner nursery at Galway and looked a class angle in the race, but I actually spoke to Kieran Cotter before the race just because he was beside me, and he's like, this horse is going to win races. He pulled 6 lengths clear at 3rd. It didn't look the strongest nursery, but that was a fair old performance. He actually started off running a nice race behind Democracy, who's proven disappointing at the Curragh. Backed that up and ran well at the Curragh, but I think he's by Dragon Pulse. I think a little bit of soft ground definitely kind of important to him, but I think he's going to win plenty of races. Stepping up and trip as well is going to suit. And Kieran Cotter is an excellent trainer, and I thought, given his lack of experience, was a really, really good run and did everything bar win.
Good stuff. Well, look, that's it for now. AK, enjoy the Curragh on the next 2 weekends. You'll be glad to hear. And we'll see you all again next week. Thanks for joining us, guys. Bye for now.